I'm pretty confident that I'm just smarter than every single villain in this comic at this point. This isn't something that Eggman is misunderstanding like Starline and Zavok talk about. How convenient for Starline that every single villain that he's looking for are in the same cell block. Would he not need multiple plans to run an empire like this? That doesn't even make any sense. Eggman should actually be disgustingly competent. He just has random bouts of varying levels of security in some places, and in others, he just lets anybody access whatever they want at any time. Is the IDW team not taking into account the fact that the entire world is against Eggman? I need to call him out on this one specifically, because this one might actually be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen Eggman.
To the Eggman Empire. Authorization approved. Access granted.
What is happening, freaks? My name is KotyTang. We're temporarily back to Ian Flynn's writing. With this contrast happening right as the saga begins, we'll be able to see how Ian compares to his peer, Evan Stanley. Excuse my voice for a little bit for this video. I've caught a little bit of the affliction, if you would, okay? So I'm not at exactly 100% for this one, but that's okay, because we're gonna keep going. As a quick disclaimer before we go on, this is my first time experiencing the IDW series, so I ask that you please refrain from posting spoilers in the comments below. But with that said, let's get on to IDW's next miniseries, Bad Guys. Issue 1. Dr. Starline heads to Egg Base Sigma to obtain it as his own hub for his empire. He attempts to use his own personal login to take over the base, however it backfires and he's attacked by every badnik around, narrowly making his escape. They really used Awooga again. That must be Ian Flynn's favorite siren noise. Still one of the worst alarm onomatopoeias you could possibly think of. Realizing he needs to make a new plan if he wants to take over the base, as well as remembering that he still needs a replacement for his warp topaz, Starline plans to head to Everhold Prison to create a ragtag group of villains that he deems worthy of helping. By using his hypnosis gloves, of which he apparently has always had, he places the guard and the warden into a trance. The warden leads Starline to the three biggest villains in the entire prison: Mimic, Ruff, Tumble, and Zavok. The warden gives a rundown of each villain to Starline, however, Zavok reveals Starline's true identity, breaking the warden out of his trance, so Starline puts him to sleep. None of the villains trust Starline at all due to his dealings with Eggman. However, Starline is able to partially convince the crew that he needs them in order to get revenge on Eggman. Starline even promises Mimic that he can get his record wiped from Eggman's files, making Mimic a free man to do as he pleases. Meanwhile, Zavok will be the leader of this new group. In truth, Starline secretly plans to dispose of each member once he takes Egg Base Sigma. And ironically, Zavok also secretly plans to sacrifice the whole Bad Guys League to battling Eggman in order to get his revenge and find the Deadly Six. The deal is made, and the group use their unique abilities to break out of prison, officially beginning the League of Bad Guys. Wait, so Starline has always had hypnosis gloves? What? He's obviously just kissing Zavok's ass when he says that Zavok's iron will wouldn't work on his gloves, but it is pretty questionable if they would or would not work on Zavok. We have a few comparisons to the strength of these gloves, which come directly from the Warden, the guards, and also Rouge. You can debate amongst yourself if Rouge should be susceptible to these things, but if Starline has always had hypnosis gloves, why hasn't he been using them? If we go back to the issue when we saw Starline for the very first time, it's actually entirely true that he's been wearing these same exact gloves and even these same exact spurs on his boots. So if we put that logic into full effect, Starline has never tested out if his electric spurs would actually work until he went to attack an Eggman base for the first time. And as for his hypnosis gloves, he could have easily just hypnotized anybody in Sonic's gang to do whatever he wanted. They're pretty accessible people. At almost any time of the day, they're out in the open just waiting for something bad to happen to them. It also entirely begs the question as to why didn't Starline use the hypnosis on the Deadly Six? Even if Zavok's mind truly is that strong, Xena sure isn't, Zaz isn't, and Zomom definitely isn't. Turn them all on your side, and then what the hell is Zavok gonna do? This whole plan ends in Starline betraying Zavok, right? Well, how about this? Offer to help Zavok find the Deadly Six, and then hypnotize them all right there. I do actually want to think about these new tools that, again, Starline has apparently always had. Has he really never tested his feet gadgets on anything? With the context we have now, let's just think about this. He made them in a lab way back when, put them on and was like, I'll test them eventually. And then instead, he makes the Warp Topaz, and then finally he's like, let's go sneak into an Eggman base, and then I will decide to finally see if these things even work at all. Something positive I could say about Dr. Starline is I do like how he changed all of the robots under him to a more maroon or deep reddish color, as opposed to Eggman's orange. It's fitting, but he should probably work on stylizing these badniks even more so that they're not just egg pawn ripoffs. Can we talk about this prison for just a moment? Bro, Mimic is here? Rough and Tumble? Zavok? Is this IDW's own Arkham Asylum right now? So Eggman can go to prison after all? So all of the characters in the Sonic universe can choose to lock these guys up, but nobody, and I do mean nobody, has ever tried to lock Eggman up? Seriously? Also, where in the hell is Everhold? And where the hell is Everhold prison? Where are we? Is this place supported by the Resistance? Is this just an island where the town is literally just a prison? Who is running this place? Apparently the entire animal kingdom relies on Everhold Prison because look at all of these inmates, bro! Even more, are these Wispons mass-produced and sold to people? Or is it actually that everybody just stole these from the Resistance because, last time I checked, the Resistance is where all of these weapons came from? Are Amy and the rest of the people from the Restoration making absolutely no profit off these things? Furthermore, are the Wisps just okay with being placed into eternal servitude by every single person on planet Earth? Also, can we talk about how Starline put his entire trust into Eggman enough to believe that his own login would still be active? This is just the start of Dr. Starline's many incompetent missteps that he's going to be taking throughout this whole miniseries. The best thing we could gather from Starline's screw-up at Egg Base Sigma is that if Eggman ever accidentally fat-fingered his password, this man is just done as his entire base goes on full alert. Nice. Now you would assume that it's actually Starline's login itself that sets the base on alert, but no. It's literally just the fact that the password didn't work. You'd assume that he'd actually let Starline log in, and the act of him logging in would actually be what sets the base on alert. Let's also talk about the fact that Starline thinks he had a trusting partnership with Eggman, while simultaneously acknowledging how stupid and incompetent Eggman is, as well as the fact that Eggman never even trusted him or would even trust him again. That is some extreme levels of delusion. Yet another L passed out to Dr. Starline over the fact that he thinks he can't have a trusting relationship with anybody and instead plans to just burn the bridges with every single person that could have potentially been on his side. Rough and Tumble have an interesting conversation. Let me just point out the fact that Barricade Town never didn't have Wispons. So I don't even understand how Barricade Town having Wispons now was a solid defense against Rough and Tumble. After all, that is the reason they're in Everhold. They went back to Barricade Town and they had Wispons, so they got locked up again. But instead of just being in a random jail cell, they ended up in Everhold Prison. The fact that Barricade Town already had Wispons was a big part of my reasoning as to why Rough and Tumble shouldn't have been able to take over the town in the first place in issue 3. As I said back then, the Wisp would just turn on them, which is exactly what they ended up doing when Sonic and Knuckles go there. That's how they lost the first time. I guess this is IDW's attempt to retcon that fact, and they're just trying to tell us that Barricade Town didn't have Wispons before. It was apparently just a town that had a warehouse of a ton of Wisps in capsules, without any way to actually use them in a combat sense. Is that slavery? Maybe Barricade Town might have to be taken down. So, Starline states that Zavok is in an archaic cell. I agree, that was smart of the Warden to do. I'd just like to note that every single cell except for Mimic's is exactly the same. Strangely, for Mimic's cell, it's literally just a box in a cell with the cell doors ripped off. They really had no reason to pop the cell doors off for this. It's just extra protection at that point. Regardless, it kinda defeats the purpose for IDW to point out that there's a difference in Zavok's cell when we can so visibly see that the cells are not designed any differently from the other. However, couldn't Zavok still open that? Oh, and to further go into how these cells are placed, how convenient for Starline that every single villain that he's looking for are in the same cell block, side by side, right next to each other. They even put Rough and Tumble in a cell together for absolutely no reason at all. Why? Why would they be in a cell together? There's no way they ran out of cells. The job that Starline is pretending to go for is for the maximum security wing. So what you're saying is that in the maximum security wing, we only have 3 cells available? Even the Warden makes it clear that these guys are the only ones inside the maximum security wing. Whatever. How about we talk about Starline convincing everybody to work with them? Isn't it crazy how Starline is correct about a lot of what he's saying while trying to convince these guys to join him? Zavok was simply more efficient than Eggman with the Zombots. That's true. But in the end, Zavok and his entire crew were infinitely less crafty and battle ready, so they lost the war regardless. If Dr. Starline doesn't actually mean half of what he's saying, then that's another L for Dr. Starline for not realizing that what he just said is entirely true. Everybody seems to be more competent than IDW Eggman. For some reason, we're also just supposed to believe that IDW Eggman runs an entire empire all by himself. I don't understand how Eggman could be so competent that he can man everything an entire empire would require with the utmost efficiency, but can't put a simple plan together. Would he not need multiple plans to run an empire like this? That doesn't even make any sense. Eggman should actually be disgustingly competent. I suppose we're just supposed to believe that his entire empire was just a giant stroke of luck. Luck so giant that nobody can take down the entirety of the empire. Issue 2. Now that Dr. Starline has created his crew of villains, and Starline believes that everybody is on his side, the next step begins. They plan to attack an Eggman base that has a magical energy source called power cores, which Eggman uses to power a variety of his machines. But when harnessed by people, they can amplify a user's physical abilities. Mimic gets annoyed at this plan, wanting to just skip to the part where he's taken off of Eggman's records, to which Starline responds that he's surprised he has to explain things so heavily to him. See, these cores will allow them to begin Phase 2, which will enable them all to actually storm a Eggnet hub. This over-explanation causes Rough and Tumble to laugh at Mimic and call him Armhead? Casual racism? The crew agrees to attack the base for the cores, and Soy Jack Zavok? No way! After much combat, the crew is able to take down most of the base, so Starline instructs Mimic to transform into Sonic to make Eggman think the restoration had something to do with this attack. However, a T-Rex robot comes in, and Zavok is unable to control the robot because it has an EM shield around it. And then... what? Did Ruff just fart the dinosaur to death? Starline deletes any record of the bad guys having been there on the security camera, except for Mimic pretending to be Sonic, and the crew take the cores, which come in these very large boxes. On their way out of the base, Zavok and Tumble attempt to leave evidence that Sonic used his spin dash to get into the base by punching the front gate. Ruff wags off the wrong hand in pain, and the gang returns to Starline's base. Eggman eventually arrives to assess the damage, and notes how much is missing in the database. Although Eggman can see that Sonic and Tails must have played a role, he just can't shake the fact that what happened at the base is not how the two operate. Meanwhile, the overabundance of cores the bad guys stole allows Starline to be able to make his new glove device, the Tri-Core. Hey, what do you think you're doing here? This is supposed to be an exclusive to the Eggman Empire, and you're not a part of it. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the video. Leave a comment below about your feelings on the Bad Guys miniseries, and you can have your own personal dialogue with yours truly. Now back to the video. Reason number 847 why Dr. Starline is actually just an idiot and isn't as smart as IDW pretends he is. He genuinely believes that everybody has fallen for his scheme just because he helped them escape jail, even though he's completely aware that they're all just as self-serving and conniving as him, if not more. Well, except for Ruff and Tumble, maybe. This issue actually starts with a look into each member's threat level, Ruff and Tumble being the lowest and Zavok being the highest. Interestingly, Dr. Starline is just one tick under Mimic. To be completely honest, I don't think Starline has done anything to be significantly higher than Ruff and Tumble are just yet. Mimic's entire reputation should bring him up to at least a 9 if not a 10. I'm assuming that they would have to consider the fact that he was part of an elite mercenary group that strictly went after the most elite missions in regard to battling Eggman. If we're just talking about past achievements, Dr. Starline's threat level might actually be pretty fair, as he just infiltrated IDW's own Arkham Asylum. If we're just considering these guys at face value, then the very fact that Starline worked side by side to Eggman and has done everything to be Eggman but even better would probably put Starline at a perfect 10 right next to Zavok. Me personally though, just based on what I know of each character and what I've been shown of each, I'm rating Starline a 3 due to his lack of the Warp Topaz, which has been replaced by the Tri-Core, which will be useful as it allows him to fight the heroes in unison without being harmed, but the fact that he has a very large brain that he's incapable of using properly, since most of it so far has been purely a facade, I can't really find a reason to rate him higher than a 3. Mimic gets a 6 from me because his shapeshifting is a killer thing and his borderline sociopathic attitude will let him do pretty much anything. And I will take into account that he was present on every mission against Eggman for the Diamond Cutters, but I will say that his actual combat skills have been lacking since his debut, as well as his actual usage of shapeshifting. Zavok gets a 7. He's the only one that's truly fought Sonic at his best, and he has overthrown Eggman twice now. He's absolutely a danger thanks to his brute force and his ability to manipulate robotics. Finally, there's Ruff and Tumble at threat level 1. They're the first to go in and first to die pointlessly, but you do have to deal with them both at once. When it comes to these 3 Sonic Hero themed cores, I do have to wonder just how exactly these cores are created to go into the exact thing they'd be designed for. I can only imagine that they're just concentrated energy and not some magical energy source that enables people to fly and get extra strong or run fast. From their use, it seems they're designed for machines, not personal use. How would Starline even know that each color would personally enhance something on a person? I don't really understand that logic past a Sonic Heroes video game level up mechanic that became an actual tool in IDW storytelling. In this issue, we finally discuss one of the direct sources for Eggman's very own internet provider. And something interesting is said about it in this issue. Starline says that everything within that Eggnet Hub's region will be able to be controlled. So, let's just say, for a fun little game, if Tails and the rest of the Restoration just decided one day, you know what? Screw Eggman! And they just raided one of these Eggnet Hubs. They would be able to not only shut down, but also turn a massive chunk of Eggman's army against him, right? Okay, so this place should be infinitely more protected than it's going to be. Spoiler for the next video, nothing related to a super badnik is even going to be remotely protecting the actual Eggnet Hub. The bad guys are all about to just kind of walk in with the most basic badniks ever as resistance. Speaking of Eggman's internet and its extremely underprotected status, Mimic is actually foreshadowing something in the future. If all of him being scrubbed from Eggman is how he weasels his way into the main series, then I'm entirely here for it. I'm absolutely certain that Eggman will still remember him and realize that all trace of him has been erased, but there will be nothing Eggman can do about it if his entire file is scrubbed. And since we're on the topic of Mimic and Eggman, I have a question. Is there any reason that Eggman's robots just can't determine biosignatures? I feel like that would be a requirement for them. No? Wouldn't they have to be able to determine when somebody infiltrates their base? Or even able to identify a friendly badnik from a non-friendly badnik? Why is Mimic just able to shapeshift and pop up in front of these guys and not a single one can detect that the guy isn't a robot or the fact that he isn't registered to the Empire by just scanning him? Another question I have about Eggman's robots comes when Zavok can't control the T-Rex robot. I'm pretty confident that I'm just smarter than every single villain in this comic at this point. Especially the guy who's supposed to have 300 IQ. I'm not just gonna keep calling him out on his security measures, I need to call him out on this one specifically, because this one might actually be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen Eggman do. Eggman should have countermeasures for basically everybody at this point. Again, let me reiterate, he's one man running an entire empire all by himself. When a new villain pops up and he manages to come out on top somehow, he should immediately go into making sure that whatever just happened to him never happens again. And one of the craziest things that has ever happened to Eggman has happened twice at this point. The Deadly Six has taken control of his army. So here we see, through the T-Rex robot, that Eggman is perfectly capable of adding on something that will completely block the Deadly Six from ever doing this again. Why don't all of Eggman's robots have this addition? Are we going to suddenly say that Eggman is now incapable of mass production? Sure, fine. We can say that it would be too hard to create an attachment to the badniks already made for whatever reason. So why then doesn't at least Metal Sonic have this limiter added onto him? One of the characters that Eggman would never want to be used against him. I don't know, seems just as important, if not more important, that Metal Sonic has this EM shield placed upon him. Given what just took place in the Metal Virus saga, he should probably get on that by now, don't you think? Oh, since we're talking about robots, I also don't agree with the assertion that no robot will be as rambunctious as Rough and Tumble. You literally just program it to be sporadic and reckless, and then it will do exactly that. The fact that it can be rebuilt would also definitively allow it to be even more efficient than Rough and Tumble could ever be. A robot like them could even ignore the fact that it's falling apart. And you can make as many Rough and Tumbles as you want. This isn't something that Eggman is misunderstanding like Starline and Zavok talk about, but IDW is sure as hell gonna make it seem like that's the case. Eggman's robot army is more efficient than any human could ever be. So Starline was 100% correct, but for some reason he's being swayed by Zavok, the guy who runs a team of absolute Neanderthals that fail to do everything right at all times. You want to see how Eggman's army actually works when it comes to some of these robots? We could look at the unpredictability of robots such as Metal Sonic, Omega, Gamma, Emerald, Gemerald, and even Orbot and Cubot. These are all robots that are designed with entire personalities that all can only be described as fully human qualities, since they are even able to be reasoned with and make on-the-fly decisions. And that goes into a different point as well. Isn't it interesting that Starline is just now considering that he could possibly do better than Eggman? I suppose that he's never fully committed to surpassing Eggman necessarily, as he did want Eggman to join his empire after he proved him wrong. And again, I do like the idea that Starline is building a counter empire to Eggman. It's very fitting for his character and an obvious direction that he needs to go. I don't like that once again Starline is not really making this decision on his own. Ironically, it's once again due to Zavok's intervention. Oh, and I'm just wondering, how did Starline get access to Eggman's security recordings? Does Eggman not even have a password for that? Starline surely didn't use his own password. That failed last time. So why is it that he could just pick up the nearest remote and delete everything off the security cameras? Eggman's selective security is exceedingly concerning. He just has random bouts of varying levels of security in some places, and in others, he just lets anybody access whatever they want at any time. Is the IDW team not taking into account the fact that the entire world is against Eggman? There are even times when he can't trust even his own robots. How does he have barely functioning security going on in even just one of his bases? I do enjoy the fact that Eggman immediately knew that everything about Starline's plan was way too different from Sonic. It's nice that IDW added in the fact that Eggman knows both Tails and Sonic way too well to be tricked by a simple on-the-fly cover-up. Although, to hear Eggman calling Tails Miles or even Prower is just odd. I'm curious, actually. Was this a case of Ian Flynn just trying to randomly boast about his knowledge of the series to show people that he knows Tails' real name? I want to test him on that. I'm going to secretly make a count just to see how common it is for Eggman to refer to Tails this way, because I don't believe that he does that. And through that count, we'll see if Ian was just trying to show that he knows Tails' real name. This issue has constantly been teasing the Sonic Heroes team aesthetic since the beginning, so it's nice to see a sort of payoff in the end with Starline's new glove tech. I just find the Tricore to be a much more lackluster name in comparison to the Warp Topaz. Something about things relating to minerals seems very on brand for Sonic. Maybe naming the Tricore something like the Triad Opal, or the Treble Quartz, or maybe the Trifecta Onyx. Be sure to join me next time as we continue the final 2 issues for the Bad Guys miniseries. Then after that, we'll pick up right where we left off in the main series of comics. So be sure to check out the first video on that saga. Wait! Guess what? The KotyTang Discord server is up and running. If you ever wanted to have an extended discussion with me and other like-minded people, this server could be your #1 spot. From discussions about Sonic Riders to reasons why Charmy is quite literally one of the worst characters to ever grace the Sonic universe. We've got it all here. Hop down to the description below, create your own Discord account, and join in on the Sonic discussions. I hope to see you all there. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, okay, bye!